Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.
Good evening and welcome to another Webster Report. The second one on the reboot from last week. We were worried that we wouldn't have anything to really talk about this week, but I think there's one or two things that's occurred. I know you said earlier, Alex, that you don't watch a lot of news, or you don't get to take too much in. Obviously, even you know that there's one or two issues going on at the minute. What's your take? This is now, it's looking to me like the Flames are having petrol poured on them.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it. This has been simmering, as we know, for a long time. You know, when people talk about papering over the cracks, well, you could even argue going back to 2008 with a credit crunch, manufactured as it was, you know, this subprime mortgage nonsense. But realistically, there have been massive cracks in the foundations for ages, and the elites have simply papered over them. But that doesn't make the cracks go away, so the cracks just tend to get wider and deeper over time. The division gets wider and deeper over time. So I think we've just got to a point now where something, we don't know what that something is lit the blue touch paper. And here we are. I don't know if you've got an international audience, Paul. I know a few hundred watched last week. I don't know if it's exclusively British audience, but of course, in the wake of the appointments of Sir Keir of the Starmer, and as many people talk about, Starmageddon seems well underway within around 4 weeks of him getting into office. That is probably something of a record.
Yeah, well, you can see now that as soon as they got in, the first statements were made about every borough getting the first share of these immigrants that are coming in now. There's nothing's changed. You know, people were still doing that thing, Alex. We'll vote for Labour this time because things will change. It's just gone quicker. You know, it's all these protests that are being held now, right? There was protests organised for yesterday and protests organised for today. So they're labelling it on the mainstream that these protests are riots. You know, the booting shop windows in already. They're doing what they did in America, and this is going to be okay. And now what they're doing is they're making the people argue with each other. And Keir Starmer is still saying the same things, that this is going to carry on. This plan's been in place for a long, long time. You know, there's exclusively now. I saw an article today that the property in London is owned by Indians. More Indians own property in London than any English people. It's complete. The demographic has completely changed. And if you are, you know, it's what happened in America. I always remember the Obama phone lady. You know, they were giving away new iPhones. They called them Obama phones. And she says, I'm going to vote for Obama. He said, why? Well, he's giving me a phone. If I vote for him, he might give me more. You know, and you think, can nobody see this? I'm seeing now, I've just been, a mate notified me that somebody had contacted me and they'd not heard from me. Well, I had to go back through my messages and missed one. And I said I'll speak to her this week if they still need to. But it's getting that busy, Alex, that people want to, you know, you said that people are waking up. Owen was saying when he came on just before we started, He said that you can see people are now waking up. Maybe they'll do something. And that's when I said, well, do you remember at the cattle market? We were sat in the cattle market saying, we could change the world.
Yeah.
And now the cattle market's gone.
Yeah. It's very hard to. I think people really struggle to know. I think I might have said this last week. They don't really know what to do. We've been stitched up, trussed up, like a chicken on a rotisserie. Hello, the Wigan Joker. So we have been stitched up like a chicken on a rotisserie, I think. And nobody knows what to do because we've got this so-called democratic system that every 5 years you get a chance to vote, and most people don't bother voting anyway because they're so disaffected. So that's the only mechanism that we've got. And when that mechanism doesn't work for whatever reason, the only thing you've got then is a bunch of people who don't feel that politics has any relevance to their life, and yet the politicians who have no relevance to their actual life are still making big decisions that affect their life. So, nobody consulted us about whether we wanted 5G. Nobody consults us about lots of infrastructure projects that they decide to implement, like HS2, which they then decide to abandon, or at least some of it. And we just, we're spectators, standing in the wings, wondering what will affect us on a policy level, what won't. Then we get told, they might double council tax, they might do this, they might do that, they'll increase this, they've got rid of the winter fuel payment for pensioners. A few weeks after they've come in, and you just think, well, that's just everything you need to know. We just say the same spiel every time until we get in, and then we do what we want. So everybody knows this, but nobody has a chance to do anything about it now for another 5 years, unless they force the issue. Then, of course, if they do that by showing that they're not being listened to, so they act. If they act, there's legislation under the laws that they've brought in saying you can't do that on pain of 5 or 6 years in prison. So they're shutting down everyone's avenue of peaceful response, forcing people then to say we've been given no option. And we know what happened in France, in 1789, and the king lost his head. So, and they say don't mess with the French. Our British Constitution, and by that I don't mean the British Constitution, I mean the Constitution of British people, has tended to be less confrontational. And we never had a revolution.
Well,
this is it. This is it. So really, I think anybody who cares is being forced to not care. In other words, they're forced into apathy because they don't feel there's anything they can do about it, yet they feel that they're being oppressed. Now, that's a recipe for anger. We see what happens in the Arab nations when they're continually oppressed. They turn to drastic measures. So when you're defenseless and you're under attack, and we know it's a culture war, in the end, that war of attrition wears anybody down. And I think I heard, actually, this is interesting, actually, it's a good segue. I heard earlier today from a friend that New Zealand have just passed legislation that under the next pandemic, they're the first nation to do so, the police will be able to forcibly vaccinate members of the public. Now, because
they're already doing that in Germany. They're already doing that in Germany. That's all civil law.
Yeah,
there's a lot of civil law in New Zealand and Australia. That's why they were the test bed for our law, because we have still got common law. That's not been as easy to implement. If we'd have stayed in Europe, they'd have been forcing those vaccines on people already.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, that, Paul, because at the end of the day, most people don't do anything about things until they're directly affected. Now, I'm still trying to process, from a Christian point of view, Jesus says, turn the other cheek. Now, you can say that that's not just a generalizable universal principle, or you could say it is. But the problem is, what about the right to defend yourself? So, for example, Jesus before Pilate didn't defend himself, right? And he was going to be crucified, but he said, only because I allow it, because a higher power allows it. So the problem that we've got now is, when I look at it, I struggle, and I think, if I didn't have Christian values, then my position would be, if somebody tried to force vaccinate me, I'd kill them on the spot. That would be my response, natural human response, because it's an invasion of my body boundaries. So I just say to them, I'm just giving you a fair warning. If you violate me with that thing that I don't want against my will, I will execute you. That, I think that's perfectly legitimate. You can only say to somebody, if you do this, you will face consequences. If you violate my will and force this medical procedure on me based on something that's utter garbage that I don't believe in, and you force it on me, unfortunately, somebody will have to pay the price. Because there's no way otherwise of establishing justice, and I mean in human terms. Now, from a Christian point of view, you can say, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. Maybe. But do I want to be vaccinated against my will? No. So if I didn't have any Christian values, I would simply kill the person. I wouldn't allow it. Okay, I'd still get vaccinated, but I'd still resist. I'd lay a marker down. But this is the problem now, you see, because people have done nothing. They think they can violate you on every level. So I don't know what we do about that, Paul, to be fair.
I think with the IQ test that happened, Alex, over the last 3 years, I think they saw that there's at least enough people that are going to go with it, and there's going to be enough people who won't do much about it. I think they're taking a gamble. I think they're just going to go all in for this. There's nowhere else to go with it. You know, when you're seeing what's going on with Israel, they've assassinated the head of Hamas. They've assassinated somebody in the Iranian upper echelons as well. That's primed for Gog Magog. You know, This is I've never seen events happening all around the world that are pointing to the biblical stuff more than ever. You know, when you start to find out the archaeological findings that are showing that the Bible was correct, you know, things like the Hittites was a myth. Nobody believed that the Hittites existed. Then 200 odd years ago, they find where the Hittites lived. They find the stone tablets. So there's things that are coming out now that people didn't know. And if you don't go looking for it, you're never going to find it to join these dots. But you know, you find things like the Red Sea crossing. You're finding chariot wheels on the floor where this crossing happened. You're finding a burnt mountain. You're finding engravings from the Israelites. You're finding all this stuff, and people still can't go, maybe I should have a look into that. It's with that kept that busy. And don't forget, the Premiership's going to be starting again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So the bread and circuses will take over. But what's worrying me is that all these protests now that are becoming riotous, and as Steve said in the group, that the police won't call these riots, they'll call them protests. Well, a protest is a legally organised protest where you can go and stamp your feet and say, I don't want that. Meh, meh, meh. You can do that. But Bob Menard years ago, it was a Canadian fella, he described it perfectly what protest meant. It's like when you tell your kids, come on, it's bedtime. They stamp their feet, they cry, and they have an episode and everything. But where do they end up? They end up in bed. But they still have the right to protest, to stamp their feet and say, I don't want. Well, that's what a protest is. We're organising something where we can go and wave a flag and a placard and say, we don't really want this. And they'll go, yeah, you can say that. See, now you've done it, you're still having it. It's not rejection. And the only, as you touched on, when we can't go into these courts with remedy, you know, bearing in mind, I'm stood in court with a gas company who sent me a cheque that I've got to endorse and give it them back under the bills of exchange to set the bill off. Shouldn't be any problems with this. It should be that easy. But if they accept that, then everything starts to fall. And as I said last week, Alex, and I say every time I do a talk, I've got another talk coming up in Burnley in September. When I understood that paying me bills, which I was taught to do, which was a must, was the wrong thing to do as a creditor in a debt-based economy, and what the ramifications of me paying those bills and not setting them off, I couldn't understand how people don't see how pertinent that is, because I'm paying for everything 3 times over. I get out of bed, I go to work, so I pay for my labour. My labour that I get paid wages for is then taxed. So I've now paid for this gas, water and electric grid twice, and then they send me a bill and they're asking me to pay again. That's wrong. As a creditor, I shouldn't be paying again. I should be setting off. If that's true, and everybody did it, that meant the national debt would be flat. We'd flatten the national debt because we could account for what our money's been spent on. Yeah, we spent so much on gas. Yeah, so much on electric. So much on. Yeah, we've got all these in. Oh, but some of the debtors haven't paid though. We'll have to enforce that. So they go to the shopkeepers who've not paid, the shops that are empty, so they can mark them off, so they can balance the books. That's how, funnily enough, the system was meant to work. That's why I had no issues going in with the Mr. Paul Webster title, because there's nobody got a better claim than that over that than I have. And if they have, they better come and show me. But the factor is they've given me a bloody check and then said I owe them that money. So if you give me 50 quid and I've got it in my hand, and then you say you owe me 50 quid and I give you 50 quid back, I don't owe it you anymore. Well, you've given me a check that you can't get access to some funds and you're saying you owe me 50 quid. So I've signed it, I've endorsed it, I've given it you back. Now I don't owe you 50 quid. So that's all British Gas did. They sent me a check to set it off. And they always sent me it. They always sent the right ones. They took a stance now where all these companies are refusing to send out the joint gyro and they're just sending out invoices. And people want to know what to do. You're going to have to go to court. And yes, you go into a court that can't really let you win, but what else do? You've got to go down the remedies. You've got to at least try it, because you can't jump from A to D, because when you get to D, the judge will knock you back to B because you've missed it. So you've got to go through it all, and that's what we did. We had to go through it all. If we'd have had, like I said again last week, if we'd have had the numbers that we've got now that are looking into this stuff and wanting to do it, if we'd have had them 10 years ago, Alex, we'd have changed things. They haven't got a clue what to do because it was so blatantly obvious that they were sending checks out. And sending a check out means that you don't really owe it. It's got to just be set off. It's how accounting works. It's basic bloody accounting. You know, and if what I couldn't get is that if that is wrong, gas, water and electric, and banks aren't lending money, and I'm seeing banks foreclosing and property being stolen to the point where ordinary people have got to come together in dozens of people are coming together to say, no, you're not doing this. You know, we've got people taking houses back, but they're not winning it in court. They've got to go to court and then still try and win it when it should be that simple. Have you got the promissory note and the deed? Yes. Well, can I claim on the insurance? That's how simple it is, the indemnity insurance. If they've only got the deed, they've sold the promissory note. That's why they have no insurance, because they don't need it, because the mortgage has already been sold. It shouldn't be harder than that. But when you're going in and speaking in ordinary English terms to these people, they're looking for where they can hide, where they can squirrel it away into corners. And when people are going in with all these fluffy arguments, it gives them too much room to squirm into. Do you know what I mean, Alex? It's like standing, we've said before, standing in a courtroom with a utility company and saying, I have no contract. Yeah, we agree, no contract. It's nothing to do with contracts. Your property is a shop. The revenue collectors, they designated your property to collect revenue from that shopkeeper, because that's where we've registered. It's our fault, a lot of this, because of how we've acted. And when we say, well, we didn't know, that's not a good enough excuse with law. It's written down, you can go and read it. The problem that they have now is there's many people going reading it, and they're going to the courts and they're saying, no, we're not accepting it. Well, what do you mean you're not accepting it? You can't just, but we've seen it. They just stick their fingers in their ears and go, blah, 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 I'm not listening to you anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem, well, I say the problem, they're everywhere. So this is an issue of scaling these problems. But corruption's in the whole house, from the foundations into the walls, roof, windows, joists, everything. So the whole house is really dry rot, woodworm, laced all the way through it, corruption everywhere. So a lot of these people who've been out on the streets rioting, no matter what you think of them, what the demographic is, the old football hooligan contingent, doesn't really matter. And all the games will be played about far right and blah, 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 blah. But most of those people out there have no idea about the state of play with the banking system and the utilities. So it's a massive problem at a scale that's almost inconceivable. The problem is, though, when you expose people to, say, abuse, after a while they go into Stockholm syndrome because they have to find a way of continuing to survive in the face of all the abusive stuff. They have to normalize it in some strange way. No one should have to ever to normalize abuse, but in order to survive, a lot of the time, if a survivor's got no way out, they normalize that abuse. So everything that's happening now in the world and in politics has been, it talks about the new normal under COVID, but dictatorship dressed up as democracy, probably since Tony Blair, he was the person who redefined politics. And I think it was Gerhard Schröder in Germany in the mid-90s, he did the same over there. They just defined their own position as centrist, so that everything else was either left-wing or right-wing extremism. And if you look at the likes of Jeremy Corbyn, for example, he was a left-wing extremist on their model. And of course, left-wing extremists, they should just be like some curiosity in a museum, like with Karl Marx. They're not really dangerous, they're just annoying. So we don't portray them as dangerous, we portray them as stupid, out of touch, and the lunatic fringe. But the right-wing extremists, they're really dangerous. All that tells you is that the right-wing extremists, so-called, are not papping on about generic stuff and economics and social justice and all this garbage, right? We don't need social justice. We don't need democracy. We don't need any of these buzzwords that these idiots have been selling us for ages and we've been imbibing. What we need is human dignity. We need to respect the human dignity of every person, and every person is unique. So all these equality teachings and doctrines, they guarantee inequality because they set up a template of what equal is, and that's it. They impose it on everyone. Well, that's tyranny. It's not equality. It's saying everyone will live up to an ideal or be interpreted in the framework of this particular ideal. Whereas if you look at a unique human being in their life circumstances, we need to give them dignity. Whether it's a person in a wheelchair who needs personal care in order to shower, we need to respect their dignity. We need to respect the dignity of corporate bankers on £90,000 or £100,000 a year who face profound challenges in their life because they've got a disabled child, because they're still a human being. So the bottom line is human dignity has got to be applied to the human being in front of you, whoever they are, at whatever level. But we don't have a model of human dignity because we don't even think in those terms, Paul. It's all buzzwords, democracy, equality. That was all the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, liberty, fraternity, equality, all these wonderful ethical principles. But in reality, they never come to see the light of day. So what's the bottom line? The dignity of human beings. And this is what's being, in this country, the dignity of the indigenous, let's just call them the indigenous population, even though people could argue about that. The dignity of the people who've lived here for quite some time, which is largely white Anglo-Saxon, is now being, subjected to the rights of minority groups who have everything paid for them. So you've got asylum seekers, everything's paid for them, hotels, benefits, no problem. Now, people cannot put up with that indefinitely when they're suffering themselves. Most people will be open-hearted enough and open-minded enough to have compassion for outsiders, right? But if those outsiders are eating out of your fridge and you can't eat, that's a different kettle of fish. And it doesn't make you a racist or a xenophobe or anything else because you don't want somebody to be taking your share of the taxes while your health service is going down. You can't get a dentist. This is only what Nigel Farage said, and they malign him and they portray him as a racist bigot. But the facts are the facts, and these establishment elites won't accept the facts because they're hiding behind a narrative. So the problem is, on every different kind of level you can imagine, human dignity is being lost, decent people are under attack, and more of them are realizing that they're under attack, being hit in the pocket, being threatened with various measures, being portrayed as extremists. So in the end, there will be greater awareness. People will wake up. The question is, what damage will Starmer do in the meantime?
Do we get to a point where we've got that tipping point of people that we can actually do something to make some changes? Do we get to that point, or do we get to that point too late? This isn't anything new. It's been going on for a lot longer than 4 years, certainly a lot longer than 10 years, and yet slowly, it's like musical statues. We've still not seen them. We've still not seen them moving. But now they don't care that we see them move. They're just going, and we've just got them. What? What are you going to do? And what?
Yeah, people feel disempowered. They don't know what to do outside of this one vote every 5 years. Other than when they get too frustrated, it spills over in frustration. Then you get organised protest. It's, good point, Kev. Behavioural Insights team attacking us for years. UK column exposed that, didn't they, some time back? And what's the other one? It's the something brigade. What was it now? What were they called?
77th Brigade.
77th Brigade, yeah. So, yeah, warfare is everywhere. But the question, of course, is those of us who are awake have seen it for a long time, but we still don't know what to do about it. Are the Irish people winning the... Yeah, good question. Probably not. Probably, but they're equally clueless, Jimmy, I think. They don't know what to do. And it's going to lead... When people don't know what to do and there's no peaceable solution and there's no mechanism through which you can address it, people
They set things on fire. They set things on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
They set things on fire, mate. That's what they do.
And then, of course, they get portrayed as attacking the fabric of society, but it only looks that way superficially. And again, there's no interest in the corridors of power to look at motivation. They never did do. When you first had these, people tying explosives to themselves, and doing what they were doing. Did anyone look at the fact that they were oppressed by Western foreign policy? No. How would you like it if someone came into your country and portrayed you as the evildoer while they were raping and pillaging you, stealing your resources? Oh, there you go.
You can't make it.
Oh, you can't make it.
It'd have been nice to find out what his point of view is from hiding up on a mountaintop in Portugal, don't you think?
Yeah, it would have been cool. Yeah, but it's going to be hairy over the next few weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Farage, because obviously they're going to start asking him questions about Tommy Robinson. So they'll try and ask him, whether he supports Tommy Robinson in any way, or will he try and distance himself from Tommy Robinson? So all this kind of tomfoolery will go on as well. So it's going to be exploited on all sides, and the media obviously are playing their part dutifully as usual. So the question is, for how long will they be able to cover this up? Because when those riots happened in France, the other year, constantly in Paris, there was no mainstream media coverage. No. So unless it's affecting you in your town, I mean, here I am not far from Blackburn. Apparently the other day, there was all kinds of hassle in the centre of Blackburn. And it was basically only the Islamic contingent. They were carrying knives. They were all the way through the centre of Blackburn. And everybody else was told to just get out of Dodge, really.
Well, so that's the point. That's why Steve earlier in the chat room said about two-tier Kia. We've got two-tier policing that's going on. It's happening in Leigh.
Yeah.
It's happening in Leigh. We've got people who seem to be able to just get away with doing certain things, and many people that aren't. It comes down to the fact that, I'll tell you what, if I pull up on the main road on WL lines and nip in the barbers for me an haircut, I'm getting pulled, I'm getting a ticket. Yet lots of people seem to get away with it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's like the police don't want the hassle. As soon as anything like ethnicity comes into it, the police seemingly are told to back away from it. It's. I've never seen it being policed like this. And I know a few coppers. I've got some friends who are in the police, and they see it coming. Some of them only just joined and they see it coming. And they know that their principles are going to be challenged. They're going to have to either concede some principles or they'll leave the job. I already know people who've left the job because of it, turning up with bailiffs, and bailiffs saying, help us out here. And he's saying, no, we're here to prevent breach of the peace. Yeah, but normally, you give us an hand, put a bit of intimidation on. Wasn't going to do it. So again, where'd you go with that? People have got to start standing up and learning stuff and doing stuff for themselves. I've like I said, I've had to re-go through some messages because I've missed some. And there's a guy offering me money to take case on for him. That's why we're in this mess. You've got to learn to do it yourself. I'll sit there and talk to you about the information for hours. I'll do it anyway. I've never took any cases on. I'm on Peter Wilson's show on Thursday. I'm sure it's Thursday at 11 o'clock. And Peter said when he was on Richard Vobes' channel that I'd taken a case on and we had a warrant ripped up in the corridors. It was our own cases that we didn't take anybody else's case on. It's what happened in our own cases. That's why it was interesting, because you saw people being told they were going to be put on a stand and cross-examined for something they hadn't got a clue about, because they were just there to get a stamp. That was it. Then they're not legally trained. They don't know what's going on. And that's when we had them. They haven't got a clue what to do with us. But then the years went on. They just went, do you know what? Sod them, tell them, we'll give you your warrants. And then when they complain and they want to come to us and try and do something about it, we'll go, and what are you going to do? It's as simple as that. You've got to fight for this. Them joint gyros, all I can tell you is that I know that's remedy. I've had it recognised in magistrates' court with the legal clerk who told me it was remedy, but he wasn't dealing with it in that jurisdiction because he was sticking with a warrant, which is based on health and safety. So you can't keep playing about with this and then still saying that it's wrong. I know that the remedy is the joint gyro for a creditor to set off. It does exactly what it says on the tin. There's two gyros, a bank gyro, which is a paying-in slip that will be attached to an invoice, and a joint gyro, which already has the cash in transit with the Transcash logo. That means you've got to release the funds to the agent who's issued it. That's your obligation. There's no writing at 45-degree angle and accepting it for value and with that instrument. It's a signature and a date. Giving them back. That's how it should work. That's how it should be. But people have got to go into a court and demonstrate that. And people are going into courts and saying, I have no contract. They've got to get a remedy. Well, that's a remedy. Why would I wouldn't even argue about anything else. Somebody says, there's some water there to put that fire out. I've got a bucket of water to put that fire out. I'm not going to start looking around for something to put the fire out. I've got a bucket of water here. Somebody just give it me. And when I'm taught to do the opposite of that by the parents, that sets something in motion in your mind that you go, what else have I been lied to about? Banks don't lend money. My property is not commercial property, but they pretend it is, so council tax applies. How have they been able to do all this pretending? Because we helped them. We signed everything over into this jurisdiction that they can play about in for as long as they want to. It's really not hard. It's not hard to work out. These people aren't clever. They've had the information that was given to us. If we're given shit information, then we just carry on with that information. We think it's life.
Yeah, I mean, given that we're talking here, obviously other people are listening, a few comments coming in. My feeling is that powerless people talk, powerful people act. So now you might feel like you've got no power over a situation, like the decisions that Keir Starmer makes. So in that domain of the decision making of Keir Starmer, you still feel powerless, and therefore you just talk about his decisions because you can't change them. Evening, Dennis. Yeah. So we've got this equation between powerlessness and talking because we need to release our frustrations, and powerfulness and acting. The point is, though, I think you've got to, like when you practice cutting your teeth, you've got to work on small things first. So without going into the detail, for quite some time, best part of a year on and off, and particularly latterly, we've been, taking a utility company to task through the channels. Now, it's taken a lot of time, energy, and perseverance to get to a stage where we've gotten banged to rights. But they stonewalled, they used every trick in the book involving power. And this is what they'll do because they're holding the cards. So for us, in a way, I suppose it's like a test case. But then there'll be test cases in other domains as well. But it's like muscle and muscle memory. If people who've been domesticated by politicians into not participating in their own life, just living for the weekend like I talked about last time, they have not learned the technology by practice of how to empower themselves. You know, do you remember that book about your rights? You and your rights, or this is your rights, or something like that. Anyway, it was a book that came out every year. And it explained that it was really useful for you to know, having basic orientation and orientating frame. Now, you're talking about the Bills of Exchange Act and utilities. At the end of the day, you know, like you said, that doesn't have to be specialised knowledge, but most people don't have it. People don't empower themselves, they won't have this knowledge. So we've got to get the knowledge that we need to be successful in life. And the schooling system disempowers us. Politicians disempower us by making decisions for us. And then they criticise us when we don't do what they want, when we don't comply. So to be truly empowered and to be able to act, you've got to have ownership over your own life. You've got to set your own goals. You've got to have a vision for your own existence. And the problem is not enough people do. Too many people drift through life, getting from one week to the next. And look, surviving is underrated. You know, it's a good thing to be able to survive. It's the bottom line. But if we just stay there, we have no goals. I'm in a particular job. I'll just keep my head above water. I look to the left and right. I'm doing better than John and Fred. So I'm not doing too bad. I could be doing a lot better, but I'll just keep treading water like this. I'm fairly content with my existence. And you should be able to do that. But in the world in which we're living, if you do that in this world, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage. So if you've got passion about your own life and what you want from it and drive it forward, you've got a better chance because you'll have to equip yourself to succeed. Schooling system isn't helping you. It helps the children of elites because they're prepared properly. We're disempowered. That means we have to get this knowledge ourselves. You know, when you wake up in the morning, you have to ask yourself the question, am I glad I'm here? Do I want to be alive? Do I want to do something productive with my day? Or am I just on autopilot? And the vast majority of people, unfortunately, are living on autopilot. They've still got some good experiences in there. They're not totally unhappy. They know things could be better, but they've settled. And we have too many people who settled and not enough people who are prepared to do the hard work to challenge themselves in the face of all this garbage. So they just go under, or they just talk and complain about it all the time, and they don't know what to do about it. And then when they get frustrated, some of them turn to violence. I think we've got to do better. As individuals, we've got to do better. And we've got to take ownership of our own lives. And the knowledge that we need is secondary then, because we only need that knowledge so we can deploy it to improve our life chances. You know, who goes about spending ages reading stuff they're not interested in? Nobody secures knowledge about areas that have no relevance to their life. There aren't enough hours in the day. So get passionate about your own life, what you want to do, what you want to achieve. And we know things are difficult. Things are really difficult outside of ourselves, but we can't use that as an excuse. If we're going to be an army of people mobilised, truly mobilised, then they say the penny's mightier than the sword. If we're not going to have to resort to violence, we need people who are canny, who've done the research, who know what they want in life, who know what vision of society that they have, and are going to work hard for it. And if that doesn't happen, they've got us by the short and curlies, haven't they? And they're not going to let up. They're not going to let up.
They can't let up. They've been spending far too long on this. It's the factor is now, whether they've done it on purpose or not, there's a mass of people that have come to some conclusions that they're at least, there's something not quite right here. They've at least got to that point. But it's when you've got that in arguing where, yeah, we agree they've done that, but they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't lie about that. They might have lied about that, but they've not lied about that. That's Stockholm syndrome from the very beginning. I know he's hit me today, but he won't hit me tomorrow. It's the same. It's the same attitude. You've got to be honest with yourselves. Have a bit of humility. Where have you got your information from, and what do you accept as true? Because people have opinions on everything, and the valid. I keep getting told that everybody's entitled to have an opinion. Well, you can have an opinion on something, but when that opinion hasn't got any validation to it whatsoever, that we're both looking at a white card and you say it's black, and you can't show how is this black, because it's obviously white. This card is white. It's not black. There's not even a black dot on it. But if you stand there saying, well, that's my opinion, well, okay, but it doesn't really add to anything to the conversation. So it was the same with me when, if I've not, I'll certainly not enter into a debate with somebody to say that they're wrong about something when I've never even read what they're talking about, some of those documents. It would be silly of me. It would be silly of me to do that. Standing in the FA headquarters arguing about rugby, that would be stupid. I've got that right though. I've got that right to that opinion. So I had to go and re-look at everything I've ever been taught, especially through the schooling. You touched on the schooling. I noticed that the FBI followed a group of kids through the education system at the age of 5. I think there was 90% had genius level potential at the age of 5. By the age of 10, that had halved. By the age of 15, there was less than 10%. I think it was even less than 5% of the original lot of kids that had a genius level. And their conclusion was the education system's doing its job. A nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And you said if you go to Eton, you're taught the Bills of Exchange Act by the age of 13. So acting as a creditor in a debt-based economy, you set off bills, you don't pay. You get yourself into trouble. Books can't be balanced. It was such a simple revelation to understand because it's basic bookkeeping. I was a treasurer of a football team. I bought 5 new balls out of football money and I didn't put a receipt there. Then there was a problem with the books. Well, HMRC have taken the taxpayers' money and through the government, through subcontracting, the entire grid from the drilling, refining, servicing, maintenance, pumping, everything, all paid for up front so that you can get up, swear at the dog because you're going to work again, have a brew, have a shower, go to work, come back, have a shower, have a brew, have your tea, put feeting on, have a few beers, and then do it all again the next day. That's what we're taught to do. And we're taught that's life. And, when we take that's life as without question, that's just as silly as anybody not doing any research and just believing in something because. And that's where you got to. When you were showing people, hey, you should read this, they had lives. I'm not reading that, I've got a life. Well, those people who had that life because they could afford to pay bills now can't afford to pay them bills and they're panicking and they want that quick fix. You're going to have to get your hands dirty. And, my mate, Steve, he's known about this for a long time. But with 3 kids and a partner, what do? Just stop paying? Just stop paying. I'll stop paying and take it all on because I'm hard. When you've got 3 kids to feed, this is what they've done. They've got people into these situations, these positions, and it's the basic going. And what are you going to do? It's so childish. But it's people's lives.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the big question for us, of course, is how are people going to get empowered?
Knowledge can't be unhelpful. It's when people are following people who've watched a couple of videos and think they know what they're talking about. I mean, last year, Alex, I had somebody contact me, and horrendously, they followed this girl on TikTok who basically said, just replace your meters right, because it's all free. Just change your meters and don't tell anyone because it's all free. It's not true. That doesn't make sense on any level whatsoever. But somebody can get a little bit of, a like here and a thumbs up there by saying these things. Then you've got other people saying, I've not paid this for years. I've not paid council tax. I've not paid this. And, some of them you find out that, no, they've not paid it because the wife's paying it or the mum and the dad are paying it. But that aside, I've known people who've tried to take everything on and they lost everything and they were made an example of. I know people who took money back through direct debits, indemnity clawbacks from the CSA. You're dabbling in with some big people here. The funny thing is with the HMRC and CSA, they always send you joint gyros to set these things off, but we don't know what to do with them. So we think that we've got to pay them because that's what debtors do. That's what customers do. Anybody talking to you as a customer, you're a debtor, you're a shopkeeper. And the problem that we've got is, as far as I can see from my understandings of it, and I went to Land Registry to speak to them about this when you could still get face-to-face with legally trained people. And I said, how come you can change title deeds without signatures and we only need a county court stamp? That was it for me. I just knew that there's something to do with the jurisdiction. Well, Mr. Webster is a shopkeeper, basically. Mr. can only own a title. That's why I've got a title deed. I don't own the property. I own a title. And as soon as I realise that I'm putting my property into all commerce, that gives these courts full jurisdiction. So as long as they keep their fingers crossed, Alex, and they pretend that I live in a shop. I mean, the best one was with the council tax hearing when he came up with at this moment in time, your properties are capable of being shops. Not listening to any more, blah, blah, blah. My house is capable, Alex. Your house is capable of being a shop. It is capable, but it's not a shop. Well, when they say I'm not listening to anything anymore, you've now got to take that arbitrary decision and go back and start another court case, get to the high court level and hopefully get a different judge and hope for a different judge to overturn another judge's decision. You've been in this game a while, Alex. How many times have you seen judges overturn other judges?
Yeah.
Doesn't happen very often.
No.
So we're in for a fight, but we needed the soldiers to go in there with the right stuff, not to go in saying, I'm a man, I'm no contract. It's just a waste of time. I didn't want to go into a courtroom with an argument. Somebody give me a check. Don't need an argument. With when the banks got involved, you say you've lent me this money. Show me the accounting, show me the contract, and show me the bill of exchange, and I'll pay you. Show me those things where you've got this money from. Considering that it's a credit agreement agreed between a debtor and a creditor, and you're facilitating that, and I'm the debtor and the creditor, you aren't loaning me anything, so you can't make this claim. Now, have you got the deed and the note? Yes, we've got the deed and the note. Then I've paid for an insurance policy. I can't afford to pay this mortgage, so I'm claiming on the insurance. If I then try and get another mortgage, Alex, it's going to be a treble because I've made a claim, but I've got a roof over my head. What they're saying now is they're saying, no, there is no insurance policy. Then they've not got the deed and the note. They've sold the mortgage because they're in breach of trust if they haven't got the insurance policy and they're holding the deed and the note. And if they sold the note, that means not only do they not need the insurance policy, but they can't claim payment because they need them both. And these are the questions that people need to be going into courts with, not going in saying, I'm a man, I have no contract, not this rubbish. And it's like going back 15 years because that's how people started. The free man stuff, that you can't get a clearer description of the split in the jurisdiction with the free man of the land stuff. Man and the mister, it's completely different jurisdiction. But what we had a man going into a commercial court and saying, I'm a man, and the court just going, yeah, sound, we agree. He's a man. He says he's a man. Yeah, we agree. He says he's no contract. Yeah, we agree with no contract. How are you going to pay this? If that's your argument, and don't forget the one who just pushed the birth certificate forward and just kept tapping it, and they went, is Mr. Smith here? No, it doesn't look like he's here. Well, we'll find in his absence, find him 900 quid while he sat there tapping a birth certificate. What's the point? I didn't want to go into these places to argue. I didn't want to pick a fight with these people. I wanted to go in and go, I'm done. And as far as I was concerned, when you walk in with a cheque under a bills of exchange that is, it's world commerce, this, I thought you can't go wrong with this. You can't lie about this. You can't pretend it's wrong. And then you just go, what are you doing? Where are you running off to? Honestly, mate, it was, you had remedy. That was it for me. Well, I'm not going arguing when I've got a remedy for it. And the problem is, though, when we went in with the remedy, they couldn't see it. It was like Anthony Carlin's. He's preparing for court date this week. Now, his case law, Carlin Hughes versus Santander, I used in my court case. My judge turned it upside down, put her hand on top of it and said, I can't see that. I take the bank's word that you owe the money. And that case law that Anthony won was Santander, you're a very big building society, but as a high court judge, I can't take your word this man owes you money. You're going to have to prove it. Show him where this money's come from, which they can't do. That is why Anthony's case is still ongoing, why he's still got to fight with it. So it was about having remedies and not arguments. But when you see them turning case law over, because case law must be applied if it's applicable. So if she's seen it, if she'd read it, she'd have to apply it because it's applicable. But when she pretends she doesn't see it and then she takes the bank's word, well, that's like me taking you to court tomorrow, Alex, and telling the judge that you owe me 10 grand. And the judge says, Mr. Webster, I believe you. Mr. Brocklehurst, pay him. It doesn't happen unless you're a banker, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing here is, of course, there's a difference between general competence and specialisation. And in our society, I suppose, ever since Adam Smith and the division of labour, basically, and breaking things down into, the conveyor belt, you break the task down to its most mundane and routine thing for efficiency. And it's a basis of capitalism. That was a starting point that Marx suggested. So you get functional specialisation and people are more efficient. So we need specialists, there's no doubt about it. So the question is, we need specialised knowledge for specialised situations, and we need high quality general knowledge to solve many or the vast majority of problems that we encounter day by day. Now, my point is that most people don't have anything other than a rudimentary skill set, which is enough for them to be able to get through their life as it's packaged now, but not to be able to change it significantly. So until people become more generally aware of how things work and how to push buttons, pull levers and get results, then the more specialised areas, there's no chance they're going to be able to comprehend them, because they're not going to, they don't even understand how simple things are supposed to work. They don't understand how the world works. That's coming back to the education system again and the elites and how they give a privileged education to their own. They give them that knowledge and we don't get given it. So we have to work it out ourselves. That's hard work when you get past a certain age. It's like if you don't learn language by a certain age, you don't get sophisticated language, you're not going to be the poet laureate. So those disadvantages that get factored into our lives from very young, they often disable us. They prevent us from reaching our full potential. And of course, that's what the elites want. They want us to be manageable like cattle. And they've largely succeeded. So the only people who can change that is ourselves. And we have to identify what the problem is and set about solving it, which is acquiring the knowledge we need to be relatively successful in general terms within the parameters of our own life. The specialized stuff, then the problem is there's not enough hours in the day. We have to trust specialists. The problem is, though, the specialists that we get now, like in science, they're all sold out. They're all corrupted. Most people don't have the time to be able to give attention to the range of areas where they need to develop competence in order to succeed. So they farm out these responsibilities to others who they believe they can trust. Either they believe they can trust them, they're working pro bono, or they pay them because they've got a professional reputation and good credentials. But those are the only two options, really. Now, these days, you can pay somebody for a crap service and it doesn't matter. Customer service is rubbish. Big corporates are stitching people up, not giving them value for money. So it's hard even now to trust people who you pay to do purportedly a decent job for you. So we're thrown back on our own resources, our own competence, our own skilling. Where do you start? Maybe everybody needs to get familiar with ChatGPT and start asking some smart questions of AI or something. I don't know.
Do we need to ask smart questions? The simple questions are the ones that these people are struggling with.
I'd say smart is simple, Paul. But if you say simple, most people misunderstand what that means. Like some of the smartest and simplest solutions are just elegance. They've got a symmetry to them. There's just an ease. But if you're not tuned into that frequency, you won't be able to see the wood for the trees. Most people are bogged down with mundane issues. Where's my next meal coming from? What's going to happen at weekend or when I take my kid here? What time am I picking them up? And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And they just bogged down with mundane stuff. So, and we've not even touched on spirituality yet, have we? That's the thing. We touched on that quite a lot last week, but we've not even mentioned that dimension here. Because are these things ultimately, there's so much that we can do in our own strength and that we need to do in order to be a competent human being. But there are limits on that. I'm just a human being. How much can I achieve? We're talking now. How many people are we going to influence? Relatively small number. So where is the power? Well, there's only, like I said, there's only so much leverage we've got. So we get a mass movement. And the stuff we're seeing on the streets today in the last, week or so, is it a mass movement? A lot of people think it'll just fizzle out.
Well, I would say in the past, these mass movements are either, if they don't fizzle out, they've always been co-opted. And we've now got a lot of people who were, I won't say prevalent, but they were about 8-10 years ago, and then they disappeared. And now they're coming back out again. The Tommy Robinson stuff. I don't know anybody could throw the hat in the ring with him, because he's shown that there's a potential that he's getting paid by people who've got vested interest in causing chaos. If that's the case, then we should be able to talk about that. Tommy Robinson saying, why am I being silenced? Well, if that's the role that you're playing, you're going to be played on to look like you're going to be silenced. But when he was in court the last time, he had Israeli lobbyists. So the Israeli lobby was paying for his legal fees. They're not going to do that for everybody. When Madeleine McCann went missing, the Prime Minister himself personally got involved in that. How many kids go missing every day? And the Prime Minister doesn't even know. So there's things that are wrong at the very highest levels. The politics are the corruptions. It's the cesspit. That's the politics. That's where everything gets lost because they tell us lies under parliamentary privilege, meaning they can lie legally, and they can tell us these bullshit and then do something totally opposite. And because they've been voted in, there's no recourse. You've given them permission to do this. You know, they've given you censuses. Well, you've got rid of our library. We give you this census. You never said you wanted a library. You said you wanted a kid's playground. Look at that nice new playground you've got. You never said you wanted a library. So we've got rid of it. We've saved money. They're sitting on millions of taxpayer money and they're saying we can't afford it out of the council tax funds. That's all they're doing. They're sat on it and they're charging you for services. You know, I've seen today good-hearted people on the days off going litter picking around their own areas because the council can't afford it, Alex. What a load of shit. You paid for that. You paid for that, and you're going cleaning it up as well. Well, that's the same. That's the same as you ordering off. You might order something off Amazon next week, pay for it, and then when the driver turns up, pay him again, Alex, because that's what we're all doing.
Yeah. Well, maybe what we need. I mean, I'm just going to continue on this spiritual theme. Maybe we need the resurrection of the old, prophets. Do you remember the Old Testament prophets? They spoke fearlessly in the name of God to these people in positions of power. They spoke truth to power. I know it's a fashionable phrase, but no wrong with it. So maybe we need those people who are going to speak truth to power, but in the name of God, because there's got to be a higher authority than these parasites who are so-called our leaders. So to me, there's only a limited number of things we can do. We either come together, we empower ourselves as individuals, come together in groups of empowered individuals and push for change in a peaceful way that doesn't fall into this Tommy Robinson trap that they can manipulate and use against us. Or we don't trust in our own abilities to change it. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, we're too far down the road because the level of degeneracy now, if you look at what happened with the Olympics, if you look at, again, these two male boxers just beating women up and the French authorities in the Olympic Committee have authorised all this. That's openly created.
Apparently, Alex, she was born with a vagina, but there's some problems with her chromosomes, right, that made her male. But she was born with a vagina. But that means now we're going back to that a vagina actually defines gender again. So they're saying that because she was born with a vagina, she is a female. But when we said, well, you're not a woman because you weren't born with a vagina, we've been told, well, that doesn't define you as a female, but now it does. So this is the good, everything good is evil and everything evil is good. Everything is being switched about. It's right in front of your face.
Yeah. I mean, it's got such tradition and history as the Olympics. People look to it. When you look at how politicized sport is, whether it's tennis, Wimbledon, Olympics, Russia can't compete now. We'll penalise their athletes because of what we say about Vladimir Putin. Oh, we have a view on Putin, so Russia can't compete officially as the Russian nation. And yet we'll allow the kind of stuff that we're seeing in the opening ceremony. We'll allow these sorts of situations with men fighting as if they're women, and nobody bats an eyelid. So that tells you just how degenerate our culture is. And something has to happen. I mean, what's it going to take? Well, in traditional Christian parlance, it's judgment. It's judgment. If God says repent and the person is stiff-necked and says, nope, like Pharaoh hardened his heart, nope, I've got the power until God humbles him. So in the final court of appeal, we as individuals can only do so much. But a point comes when we've reached the limits of what we can achieve, what we can do. Then you're into prayer or whatever it is, waiting on God, requiring a prophet to turn up, pronouncing God's judgment, because human beings, it's too big at scale, Paul. The problems that we're facing now, the level of degeneracy is absolutely monumental. Now, why would these people who've brought degeneracy in suddenly, like one dog's got another pin to the floor, it's ready to rip its throat out, and he says, I tell you what, I'll just let you have a breather. They're going to double down. They're going to push even more. They're not going to back off. So they're going to force the issue. So to me, expect more degeneracy. Expect Keir Starmer to double down on the so-called extreme right. He's not going to address the problems that are concerning your average person. It's just going to get more and more polarized. I did hear somebody suggest that they thought there was going to be another general election fairly short order, maybe within less than a year or before the end of this year, because he is destroying things at such a rate of knots. There's such unrest so quickly after they've got in. It could become unsustainable for him. And if something really major happens under his prime ministership, it could provoke a crisis of confidence. And then if that happens, you could be in the territory of another general election.
And then what?
Well, we don't know, do we?
And then what? Do we vote for him who will shoot me in the face? Her who will stab me in the face? Them that'll kill all my cows that are farting and creating all this problems with the ozone and climate change and everything. All of a sudden, you're stuck in a load of crap. It makes you stuck for words, Alex, because they're giving people some truth mixed with a load of lies. All that does is create argument, because people will understand certain parts of it but disagree with other parts, and then other people will understand the parts that they disagree with but disagree with the parts that they... So all it does is create this this dissonance. And then you've got cognitive dissonance on top of that, where government wouldn't do this to its own people. I have close friends who said that believe me, their attitude has changed towards the government and police with what's happened over the last 3-4 years. But they were definitely on the wagon that your own government doesn't do this to its own people. They've always done it. They've always got away with it, because they'll say, "Oh, look, he's been shot," and they'll put a gun in somebody's hand, and it was him, and they jump on him. This one who shot at Trump, 57 minutes they knew he was on that roof for, mate. Secret Service, we've seen him. What are you going to do about it? Ooh. Well, we can see him. Yeah, he's definitely lay on that roof. Yeah, he's got a rangefinder. Oh, he's got a rifle as well. Yeah, but our policy is he's got to shoot first. What? Now, what trains of thought have you got? Because if Trump and his party had set that up to make it look like an assassination attempt, he's won. Because it's all going to fall on the Biden administration. If the Biden administration's done it, it's backfired on them, and he's won anyway. So it's a win-win here. It's a win-win situation. And from this, Trump's a shoo-in. He's going to come in, and he's already announcing peace and safety, and we know what happens when that happens, mate.
Yeah. Well, we have to be vigilant. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone, from the minute they're born, is making decisions. From the minute they're born, and if you're oppressed, mistreated, neglected, you're in pain, your parents sell you down the river, your teachers sell you down the river, you get bullied at school, so many different things that can happen to you. You have a choice. Am I going to survive or am I not? Am I going to turn to the darkness or am I not? So we've all been making choices all our life, and then we reap the consequences of our choices because our choices constitute a foundation. And you're not going to find happiness if you make unwise choices. And the beautiful thing about choices is God gives us free choice, free will. There are external constraints, sure, but we've got a lot of freedom within that. We can make decisions. So what kind of decisions are we making? You know, it's down to us at the end of the day. Even in these difficult circumstances, there's still a lot of joy that can be experienced. There's still lots of positives. There's still many, many good things going on. But we're seeing the darkness. We're focusing on the darkness. And that's a choice as well. So we could actually come together and start to build alternative communities. Like I was thinking about this. It might seem, do you remember CB radios? I've been toying with the idea of buying a CB radio.
Still got one, mate. I've still got one.
You've got, right, yeah, well, that's, somewhere along the line, I know there's preppers and everything, but we've got to somehow create a counterculture. Buckminster Fuller talked about that, about not critiquing or not attacking systems that don't work, but instead create one that could work. It's like build an ecosystem. And I personally think that we do have a lot more power than we think we do, and we've got to talk with each other. We've got to develop solidarity, and that looks interesting. What have you got in there, Paul? You want to get me a beer?
Fridge, mate.
All right, it's
no
very
beer.
attractive.
Go on, you say, mate.
No, I was just admiring that fridge. It's I was just wondering what I thought I heard the sound of a ring pull then. Oh, good on you. Yeah. So I think we don't want to get into a council of despair because there's a lot going against us. It's a culture war. It's relentless. Now, I suppose you could argue you don't need faith to do that. You don't need to believe in God to do that. That's an option. I personally do. I would recommend it to anyone. But you can just have resilience anyway.
As I've said many times before, I was never a religious, mate. I knew there was something after this life, after my dad was killed when I was 16. I had experiences. I knew religion wasn't the way forward for me. I've sat through many left-footer, right-footer services. It's just all about man-made rubbish that touched on some parts of the word that didn't really mean anything because I was just listening to what a bloke said it meant. But finding out how much this world has lied to me, and then understanding that the message of the gospel message itself is, I'm the way, the truth, the life. Nobody gets there other than me. And all these liars that have lied to me all my life said that was wrong. I'd have to be an idiot to not go, well, that's interesting. All you liars say he's wrong. That's interesting. I've not read this. You're saying he's a liar and he's wrong, and I've not read his book. I better read his book for myself, not what some other bloke said. I think what God meant to say was, it was that simple for me. But I still can't get how people don't understand how pertinent the fact that we're taught to pay bills that have already been paid, and we're taught that in a 2-tier education system for a reason. Why isn't there enough? Isn't there more people up in arms? I get the ones who are scared, mate. I do. It's not something I'd recommend on people to book an appointment at the court and go in there and think you're going to win everything. It's not a great experience. You'll speak to anybody who's been through this court system. It's not a great experience. Even the ones that come out unscathed to a certain extent, or with minor wins, or even full wins, it's not a good place to be in. They don't want you there because they can't control you if you've not got a solicitor. If you've got a solicitor, you're going to be controlled and you'll be guided through that. When you're a maverick and you're just on your own there, but you're using the right stuff, they can't combat it. It's when you stand there saying, I'm a man, I'm no contract, they can laugh at you. So you don't want to go in there where you give something that will laugh at you about, because after they finish laughing at you, the next man that comes in has got to shut them up about what they're still laughing at you about. So you even mention no contract. Oh, he's a free man. Let's laugh at him again. You know, that's where we've got to, Alex. People are in this position now where we should have been 10 years ago, and now we haven't got that amount of time. You know, we're a collapse away from nothing meaning anything. You know, the bills of exchange, the joint gyros have gone if they collapse the economy. That's why people need to do something, grab them by the balls now, and at least if it collapses while we've got them, they can't just implement something. The digital ID, Starmer's, we talked about this the other day. Starmer wants all the digital ID, the Chinese system. He wants all that in quick.
Yeah.
What's going to change then? Nothing. So people have got to get their hands dirty. But what I'd say is, do your due diligence. Don't go off on a TikTok video because somebody says they've not paid for years and this is how you do it. Understand what they're saying and what they've done. For me, with that joint gyro, that's your remedy. There's no comeback from that. But they're not accepting it. So how do we force them to accept it? The only thing that we can do is to go to court, sue them. This is what a district judge told me. You have to become claimant and put them on the stand. Now you've got a choice. They've got a choice. Is the judge going to back them up because they can't counter it, Alex? It's a check. What's the judge going to do? He's not going to say that's not a check because I've got my bills of exchange lawyer here who's going to interpret for me. For me, it's a remedy.
So, you know, all these separate companies, these utility companies like Scottish Power, UW, Octopus, Ecotricity, and the lot. There's this thing where they talked about Ecotricity supplying green gas to the grid. So that they make out that they generate energy, sell it to the grid. Right? Now, do they in fact do that?
No.
No, this is what I mean. So if essentially, who puts them in the position where they just happen to be the company that makes the profit from the gas or the electricity that they're ripping us off? Who appoints them?
Well, we do. We appoint them because they offer good rates to shops and business owners to use the taxpayers' funded utilities to make profit. So they create, you know, it's like Scottish Power, British Gas, they're all the big firms. Well, when you drop down, you've got basically what you're saying is British Gas is only going to rip you off by so much money, and the Octopus and the smaller companies are going to give you cheaper rates because we're not going to rip you off as much. It's the same supply, Alex. It's the same supply.
Yeah, no, totally, I get it. But what
they're doing is that with shops, they're pretending to offer them lesser rates or better rates, whereas they're now offering those better rates to the creditors, to us. And we're accepting them because we want to pay, because we were taught to pay. So this is why you've got this two-tier thing. You've got revenue collectors who are offering better rates, meaning it sounds like, oh, we're selling this energy to you. They are, in a fashion, selling the public energy to these private companies so that they can function and make profit. So they are selling it, but they're selling it on our behalf. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what would stop you? What would stop you from having a bright idea that you wanted to set up WEBSTER Energy, right? And you just decide that you want to set up as WEBSTER Energy. You're going to supply right across the country. The infrastructure isn't owned by any of these companies. It's already in place. So how did they get to make a claim in the first place to be able to benefit from the infrastructure?
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand. Like, could you muscle in and go, I'm going to set up Webster Energy, so I'm just going to apply to this body, and suddenly I'm a new competitor, Webster Energy.
And that's true. As long as I can make sure that I can get round to my customers to collect their revenue, if they don't just give it me, then yeah, I can do that. What's stopping me? I'm just another subcontractor.
Yeah.
But what you've got is you've got people who are trying to do that with their own bills. Why? You're a creditor. You've got a remedy. What are you playing about with? Why are you pretending to write promissory notes for bills that you've already paid for? That's another argument that I hear, because I've heard people say, well, I wrote this promissory note to the gas company and it was accepted. Well, you're still acting as a customer. You're still acting as a debtor. So
Yeah.
you're not winning anything. Oh, they're off your back. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. But, we're not getting anywhere. That's why when we went into court with this stuff, we didn't need to pretend that we were something we weren't. Mr. Paul Webster, have you got a better claim on that? Are you saying that you own Mr. Paul Webster? You've got my monopoly piece. You can use it whenever. If I give you permission, where have you got it from? Nobody can really claim that until you end up going right into the depths of it and understanding that we've never claimed we're here to account for our own stuff. It all comes down to the simplicity that we've been taught to act a certain way. When we've registered things, we put them into a certain jurisdiction that takes all our rights away. And it's because of how we act, and they react to our actions. Nothing new.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting few weeks, I think, Paul. Really. Stan was on holiday, so I don't know how long he's on holiday for. But when he comes back, no doubt he'll double down further on the far right.
You tell me again, what is the far right, Alex? What's far right?
It's anyone who disagrees with mainstream policy.
So if I disagree with the fact under the energy bill that the police have been given legislative powers to red key a property on the refusal of a smart meter,
you're a far right extremist, yeah.
I'm a far right extremist. Brilliant. And what if I'm far left? What am I doing there?
They're all right.
Really? Do they not want grown men to teach 5-year-old kids about anal sex? No.
Yeah, well, that's it. They're the Green Party. They're traditional Labour with all bells on. All they've done is they've taken the original Marxist ideology, which was socio-economic, and they've just made it cultural and connected it to identity politics and the culture of blame and creating victims and just protect minorities, just create new minorities and protect them as a way of oppressing majorities. If you want to undermine countries and nation states, then basically just attack the majority and you'll destroy the fabric of that society. It's such a crude device, but it works, so they've no disincentive to use it.
Well, it's worked forever, mate. Nothing new under the sun. It's all worked. This divide and conquer rubbish where people just, this over in this country, like I said, we're far too polite. We've just been so accepting, and now we're in a position where, people are getting harassed walking down their own streets by people who have their own opinions and own things on laws. You've got women who are being harassed by migrants because it's normal for migrants to talk to 13, 14-year-old girls. It's normal in the culture. I've met many people who've come from those cultures, and it's really hard for them to understand that they're doing anything wrong. Because if the culture's taught that from you being a 5-year-old, mate, you know that that's your culture. But the problem that you've got is we had a lot of people wanted to come to this country because that type of culture, that type of fundamental Islam was far too much. So they came here because they didn't want that. But now they're coming here and wanting to change that country, this country, into accepting of this. You know, what did... If my country's now going to go under like that, because we've seen it happen to other countries. If you look at Iran before 1974, if you look at Iran there, they were quite liberal. You know, miniskirts, the lot, very, you know, and then all of a sudden, post-Spock time, it was completely changed. Now, that was a regime change that the CIA was involved in. You know, you've got to understand that this has been going on in these countries forever. You know, the 3 world wars, Jimmy O'Neill touched on it in the chat room about Albert Pike talking about the 3 world wars, what they were going to do, why they were going to be implemented. They've worked. They're doing what they're doing. They're going away with everything, and people are just accepting of it. And like I say, there are people now who do see there's something bad coming. How they cope with this bird flu thing, we're already seeing that, you know, the WHO are going to be able to say you've got to do this and you've got to do that. New Zealand are already starting to look at following these things because of it. You've got bird flu legislation being kicked off in Germany, which means Europe, basically, because if it's in Germany, it's in all of Europe. So it's got to come here. And are we really going to accept police pinning people down and raping them? Because if you inject me with anything, that's rape and battery. Are we accepting of this now? I honestly can't say we won't accept it, because I didn't think people would accept standing 6 feet away from somebody else will save your life in a deadly pandemic. Walking the right way around the supermarket will save your life in the deadly pandemic. If people bought into that, I'm not sure what they won't buy into. It's going to be, you said it before, it's going to be an interesting end to this year. We've got we're into the last part of this year. I think we'll see, come October, November, we're going to see fireworks with America.
Yeah.
But they've got to build up this war now, because it's something that's just got to happen. We can't get away from it.
Yeah, well, I think all we can do is invest in ourselves.
Got another far right in the chat group there. Another far right. He thinks the moon landings were fake, mate. Bloody hell. Got some right on here tonight.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the moon exists, Paul. Just chuck that one in. Yeah, I'm just being facetious. So you just make it up, don't you? Just make whatever you want up, make whatever claim, outrageous or otherwise, and everyone's their own authority. So
they're certainly getting away with it. They're certainly going away with that now, mate.
Yeah.
It's like, it was like, go to work, don't go to work. Walk out your house, don't walk out your house. Sit in your car, but put your mask on. Get in an elevator, but face the wall. It was like, what do you mean? Go to work, don't go to work. It was all these double things. And if you do this, do that, do this, do that, if you've got people doing that, all of a sudden they'll just go, what do you want me to do? Just tell me. Just tell me what you do that. Okay. And they'll just go and do it. As long as you tell them, don't do this, do that, don't do this, do that, you confuse them enough, Alex, they end up saying, what do you want me to do? Just do that. Okay, I can do that. They'll bludgeon it down out of people.
Yeah.
While we've got communication like this, I mean, they've only got to pull the plug, mate. Facebook went down. I think there's people on bridges and everything because Facebook went down. couple of months back. Microsoft went down. People couldn't buy stuff because they had no cash. They didn't know what to do. They're looking at a plastic card going, why? What do I do? Should always have cash. But will people do something quickly enough to change it? I bloody hope so, mate. I've waited long enough.
Well, we'll see. I'm not optimistic.
I don't know, man. Have you seen anything happening over in Blackburn? Did you say? Did you say there was protests?
There was an event. There's some incidents in Blackburn yesterday, and from what I can tell, it looks as if it was largely Muslim contingent in the centre of Blackburn, and everybody else not in there. Some of them carrying knives. So it was, seems to be quite common. We don't know how long it'll go on for. Could be weeks. Will it settle down? Who's to say?
Not if it's not meant to settle down. It'll be fun, this. I just don't know. I mean, it can only end up with clampdown, lockdown even. You know, every time people go on the streets, they're fighting. Jimmy said near him in Wigan, there's I think it was a Methodist church. It's been shut down for ages. That's now been turned into a mosque. Now, the Muslim contingent in that area of Wigan is very minimal, but it tells you if there's a mosque being built, you know, if you build it, they will come. You know, Angela Rayner says, well, every borough will get their first share. Things are changing, mate. Things are changing.
Well, people are fighting back, even if it's using questionable methods. It's going to be a melting pot. So I think people need to maintain composure. You know, it's very important to remain composed at this time.
Jimmy's just said that they've attacked the mosque already in Wigan.
Yeah. Well, there's this argument in there sometimes where they make a distinction between extreme Muslims and moderates, and others don't acknowledge that there is a distinction.
There's a massive difference, Alex. I mean, me and you, we know a lot of Muslims. I know a lot of Muslim lads, right? But none of them, and I mean this, none of the Muslim lads I've known personally have ever read the Quran. None of them. I know some who are now reading it, but when we've had some debates and discussions about some of the stuff that is in the Quran and in the Hadiths, that's not what these people want. These are what you'd call Western Muslims. They don't want the Sharia law type stuff, because, I mean, Sharia law, there's a lot of, we've debated this a lot, haven't we? There's a lot of Christian stuff, a lot of Christian stuff in the Sharia, a lot of good stuff. But when you start to see how it is nailed down as the Prophet is the example, when you follow this example, you can't say, well, that was for then and this is for now, because the Quran says you can't do that. The Quran says you can't accept this scripture and not this. Our Bible says the same. You can't just pick your scriptures. You've got to accept it all. But when you accept the whole of the Quran and the Hadiths, you're in trouble. You're in trouble because of what it says, not what I believe, but because of what it says. It contradicts the Bible completely while saying that it follows the prophets. You know, I know Muslim lads who say that none of the prophets did anything wrong. David's a prophet. He did some things quite wrong. Moses murdered somebody. So it's not like there's nothing happened like this. But when you get into this fundamentalist argument, you've got good people who are better than the documents that they're following, because they wouldn't follow that. What do you mean? No, my 9-year-old daughter would not marry a 50-odd-year-old man. The daughter has something to say that she can say no. I can say no. No, you can't. According to the Quran and the Hadith, you can't. But that was for then. That was for that society. It's not for now. Well, we're going to see as this encroaches now, is this going to be implemented? Because I think this will cause infighting within the Muslim community. I mean, I've known Muslim mods who said that you can't go to a mosque and ask an imam a question about the Quran. You've got to accept what the imam tells you. There's an agenda. It's the same as when you go into a Catholic church or a Church of England church and you question them about what they're teaching. They've no answers. They've no answers, Alex, and that's the danger now. We've got the three main religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. They're the three proponents that have been the most popular. Well, when you look back through history, you can pick out the ones that have been there. When we go into Hinduism, Sikhism, and all this kind of stuff, we could say it's been mishmashed and picked off from all kinds of religions. Same with Buddhism, but there's a specific rhetoric and a specific meaning coming from these scriptures that everybody accepts that they're historical as well. Historians who weren't even Christian or Jews or anything have agreed that these are historical facts. So you've only got the three ones, and two of them agree that they're looking for an earthly king, looking for an earthly Messiah. They're both waiting for that earthly Messiah. The problem is the Jews are waiting for the Antichrist. The Muslims are waiting for Jesus, Isa, but they're waiting for this earthly king as well. We already know that the difference is it's totally different to that. It's the only way, and it's not of this earth. All the rest of them say that that's wrong. I couldn't understand. I couldn't get to the point of just believing, but I understood it intellectually how unique that was. I couldn't believe it at the time. Couldn't believe it, but I knew it was different, and I knew all this was lies. And then you realise that these people are being pitted against each other, but at the higher levels, they know about it. The Muslim Brotherhood, the Shriners, the Freemasons, they're all there. So why would the Muslim Brotherhood go against anything than what they're teaching? They're getting the rewards here, Alex. Their wages they're being paid their wages here. And it's the people who have been born into the families, even if it's born into a Catholic family, a Muslim family, a Jewish family, you're born in, you are taught. This is what you do. This is what you do. 5 times a day, do this, do that. That's what you're taught. How do you get out of that? By the age of 5, your foundation is done. Everything else is going to be learned after that. When you get to an age, when I got into my 40s and I understood that paying my bills was wrong, that was just like, everything just unraveled. Because if that's wrong, everything could be. And that meant my whole life, a life that I've lived and made horrendous mistakes in, I might not have done had I had a bit better information.
Oh, can I hear a dog in the background there snoring?
You can.
Oh.
He's a knobhead, aren't you? He's a mastiff. His chops just go. I'm dog sitting.
Can't beat a bit of dog sitting, Paul.
He's a good lad. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. So
have there been any more questions?
Well, we've got 20 minutes left. Is there anybody in the chat room who wants to jump on and have a bit of input? I mean, Owen's obviously let us down, hasn't he? So I could put the I could put it in the chat room, Alex, and see if anybody wants to jump in.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, Dennis asked that question there. If the Muslims kick off, will they attack the police too?
We're already bloody attacking the police. The English are attacking the police at the minute.
Yeah, well, they've been emboldened, so I think they will attack the police. You know, they've been given permission. They can get away with a lot more. So they will. Human nature. It's got nothing to do with them being Muslims. It's human nature.
Well, if you look at that, what happened in Leeds, and they said the police were a bit heavy-handed. All that community kicked off. They set fire to buses. They damaged their own streets, and then the Muslim leaders had to come out. And one was one of the Muslims was a councillor, and he's in the middle of the street shouting at his own people, saying, "This is where you live. This is where you live. What are you doing? How are you treating your own place where you live like this?" And it was like, you could see, it was like the realization, this man was talking to adults, and you could see the realization in these adults' faces, like they were like children, like they'd bend down and pick up a piece of rubbish and put it in a bin and stuff like that. And you're thinking, this is your own area. If you look at the American riots, they burnt down their own areas. Well, that meant now there's nothing there. There's no infrastructure. Oh, well, we'll come in and build a new infrastructure, and we'll build new shops, and we'll change it to this, and we'll do that. It's really, really not hard.
Hey, did I see something from Jimmy about being, that's it, innit? It's the counterculture. Gotta be. Gotta set up an alternative ecosystem. Whatever it involves, local beekeepers, production of honey. I mean, I've been walking over the last week or so, going for some early morning walks. Himalayan balsam's an invasive, right? You find it all around, like reservoirs and everything, totally taken over. And yet normally they're really attractive to bees and other insects. And I was there several days ago, and I must have walked in total for about 2.5 miles. And there was barely a bee around. A friend was out trying to pick wimberry last night. They would already normally been out. You'd have got, say, 3 kilograms to make some wine with, some wimberry wine. Nothing. And then everything that he got, hard as bullets, small. So something's happened this last few months. Crops are off. Very, very few insects. Now, is it the chemtrailing? Is it even at this stage, just 4G radiation? Because it's a hormone disruptor. Are we starting to see the effects now? They're paying farmers to grow wildflowers rather than food. Yeah, exactly. So our whole ecosystems, natural world is being deranged. They're doing everything. It's a bit like the Borg on Star Trek, where do you remember the Borg cube? It had to be at 39.1 degrees. And it's like terraforming. It's like they're trying to, with the chemtrails, they're trying to release all these chemicals and heavy metals. They'll sink into the earth, basically, and prevent vegetation from growing, except the stuff that's been modified by them, so that they'll be able to have their crops on their terms. I think it's a massive operation, and we've got to rebuild our ecosystems in a number of ways. Some people coming off grid. We've got to look at how we sustain ourselves. If supermarket chains go down, transport logistics infrastructure goes down. This is why I talk about CB radio. I'm not talking about becoming too much of a prepper. But we certainly need to work at developing solidarity, developing skilling. And I mean, obviously what they want to do, they want to have 15-minute cities. They want to disconnect people. They want to attack people's communication in cyberspace. So realistically, we've got to rebuild communication. Yo.
How's it going?
Not bad.
Not bad,
Just
mate.
space walk farts. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, do we just call you Just Space or what?
You can call me whatever you like, mate.
Good stuff.
Well, what's
Good
your
to see
name?
you,
That'd be a
pal.
good start, lad.
Andrew.
Andrew, well, we'll call you Andrew, mate.
Yeah.
So what's
The
your
last time I
mate?
spoke with you, Paul, was when Jason, probably about 5 years ago,
Oh, yeah, raconteurs.
on Raconteurs.
Yeah. Well, what's your take on this now, Andrew, after 5 years of this shit?
I think the chaos is being unleashed. I think we're in for a rough ride.
Oh, aye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I've just watched degradation continuously.
Yeah,
Everything just getting slowly worse.
yeah.
I hate to admit it. You know, it's the last thing that I'd hope to see in my lifetime, to be fair. But I think people have stopped caring for each other.
We are in the time of lawlessness. Definitely in the time of lawlessness. I never thought I'd see the time where there was such a lack of common sense more than anything. Put
Yeah.
all the conspiracies to one side. You know, the term conspiracy theory is used a lot. These aren't conspiracy theories anymore. They're only theories when there's no evidence. Once you've got the evidence, it's a conspiracy. Two people conspire, that's a conspiracy. We've got more than one or two conspiring in all of these, so they're not theories anymore. And this is what the problem is. People are so programmed to think, oh, JFK, oh, 9/11, da, da, da. These were massive things. You know, the 7/7 anomalies, the 9/11 anomalies, the anomalies with JFK are just so common sense. You know, as an 8-year-old, I knew that a bullet couldn't stop and turn right and stop and turn left. As an 8-year-old who shot air rifles, I knew we couldn't have guns that did that at that point. And my dad agreed, but he never told me anything more. He just left it to grow because I was brought up to ask questions. No such thing as a stupid question. Do you know the answer? No, then you need to ask the question. It's not stupid. If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. And when I got to this COVID stuff, there was no answers because I was just reading stuff, what they said they were doing, and people were saying that was a load of rubbish. And now those same people come up to you and say, hey, I read this, hey, I read that. And, you know, it doesn't make me feel any better.
That had seen a biology book that was printed before about 1950, as soon as you saw corona, that word being used and bandied about, it should have sent off waves in people's brains, because you would have known that it wasn't a killer disease.
Yeah.
This wasn't something that was going to wipe out populace, you know, because that family of diseases was basically colds, flus, pneumonia style. It would have been, it was nothing more. That again should have been enough for people's intelligence to have just to put that effort in, to look a little bit harder. I think people have been disenfranchised from their own lives. They've turned into voyeurs, for want of a better word,
totally.
with their own lives. They're just watching their life happen instead of taking part in it.
Totally. That's exactly the issue. You know what you're saying as well, Andrew, about people have lost care for each other?
Yeah.
Do you have an undergirding sort of spiritual view on that? Not necessarily formally religious, but in terms of a spiritual take on that.
Mate, I've had a burning in me since very young age. thinking that there's something out there, there's something guiding, there's a force within us. And I could never pin it down. I spent 4 years, I went deeply into the religious angles. I read a lot of religious text. I read a lot of religious books. And to be frank with you, at the end of it, I just thought it was all one and the same. It's very difficult to explain sometimes, you know. It's hard to find the right words without putting people off and turning them away, because I think that's what religion has done, especially state-sanctioned religions. I think it's just become another tool in the arsenal of the governance.
That's the problem, Andrew. Anything that's state-sponsored, you know, you're going in the wrong direction. These man-made religions, Catholicism, Church of England, Mormonism, JWs, wherever you want to put it, I mean, there's 700 religions that follow Jesus Christ, and none of them agree with each other.
That's right.
When I had my what happened to me, when I had my experience, I'd already done I knew all the religions didn't work, but I was doing mediumship at one point, and mediumship I was good at. Messages I was given, I could give was I was asked to go around spiritual churches. I was good at it, but it wasn't giving me the answers I was looking for. And it was only when I had the experience that I understood just how unique the gospel message was, and how all the other religions said it wasn't correct. I mean, I've got friends who are teachers, they teach religious education, and she teaches that the Protestants go to God on a bike, the Catholics go in a bus. For some reason, she always puts the Muslims on an aeroplane. Don't know why, but we all go to the same place. And I'm reading the gospel and it says, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. If you don't believe in me because you can't do what I've done, you don't believe in me, you're over there, not over here with me. And I went, well, that makes bloody sense. But it was a question of that all you have to do is believe. Well, how do you believe? How do you just believe in something? You can't do that. So it just meant a lot more time of me thinking and trying to understand it. I knew it was different, but I couldn't just believe it until I had that experience and I was born again. It just clicked. It just clicked that the impression I had here was all these liars, all these lies. Why can't you just let go and you know that they're all lying about this? And I just went, yeah, you're right. And it changed my life. It's the only thing that changed my life because it was the only truth that I found. It didn't matter what
I think where you've gone right is you're walking the path. That's the thing, isn't it? You've taken on board that message, and you're
very
actually
unique that people don't
into
know.
your everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bloody hard, Andrew. It's really hard,
that's
man.
Probably what the key is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the problems we've got in the modern world, because I think I said last week, there's that many voices in the marketplace of ideas that when anyone presents an outward religious set of doctrines or belief system or proposals for faith, they all get viewed as equally valid or equally invalid. And for me, I think we've got to acknowledge that with the state of play now, every human who's born, as soon as they're born, they're a defenseless baby that needs protection of its parents or at least a caregiver. And straight from the beginning, we've got to make decisions about what we do about it.
We can't pay your bills. We can't pay your bills, mate.
Well, that's a big part of it, isn't it? We get conditioned, but life and death, everyone can relate to it. Life, death, illness, mortality. The question is, what am I going to do about that? How am I going to live productively in the face of it? How am I overcoming the existential fear of death? And, people who are bound in fear don't make very smart decisions.
No, that's true. We can see that.
Yeah, we need some, because it's a big death cult that's going on now with a massive ritual sacrifice we've all been invited to.
You get to a point as well, Alex, that fear gets you to that point where, what do you want me to do? What should I do? We'll do that. Okay, I'll do that. That's where we've gone off. Remember, if you go back to 1930s Germany, 20% would have been against 20% of the population would have possibly been against Hitler's tyrannical regime, right? 20% would have been all for it. The 60% in the middle was the ones going, well, it's better than what we had, and we've got food again, and we can go on package holidays, and we've got family cars. Hang on a minute, we've got a 3-bedroom semi-detached I've got, and I can use all these motorways, and hang on, this is all right. So you have a culture that you've got 20% who know that it's wrong, 20% who believe fully, and you've got all the rest who are manipulated. And then you've got the ones who'll do nothing. We go back again to that Martin Niemöller quote, Alex, where when they came for the immigrants, I went immigrants, so I said nothing. By the time they came for Martin, there was nobody left.
Nobody there.
Because they've already
It's
been
the go
taken.
along to get along culture, isn't it? Nobody wants to be seen to be rocking that boat. Everyone's comfy. Everyone's been isolated with the mobile technologies. I'm happy. I'm watching my football. I'm watching my films. I'm doing whatever makes me happy. And they don't want to look at that broader picture. They don't want to see the horror that some people are having to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dennis asked the question, it just got off the screen about people, people who believe in God hating other people who don't believe in God. Does a person who believes in God hate ones that don't believe in God? Now, I think that's an interesting question, because I think a lot of people say, I'm right because you're wrong, right? Like nobody would say, I'm a Christian because I'm not a Jew. I'm a Christian because I'm not a Muslim. I'm a Christian because I'm not a Sikh.
Well, you're only a Christian because you say so yourself.
And you live it, like you were saying before. You manifest or you express those convictions and beliefs in the life that you lead. But most people, of course, who hate, they go, well, my dad's better than your dad. My God's better than your God. And then it just becomes like a constant infighting, because it's just a bunch of claims that position themselves against a bunch of other claims. There's no sense of, well, the example of whether this is legitimate is the way you live in your life. And I think that's the problem, that we don't see enough people living out the faith they claim to have. They just go, well, I'm right because you're wrong.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Which is what identity politics is all about. That's the same thing going on in identity politics.
Yeah.
I'm a victim. You're an oppressor, therefore I must be a victim.
Very much it. And it's that victim mentality that's got stuck in people's heads.
Yeah.
Because that's what they've been taught. They've been taught to be that victim, not being able to know that they can take themselves away from that position. They can sort their own, problems out, for want of a better word, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
Power again, isn't it? It's having faith and strength within yourself to do these things. Yeah. And I think most people have been manufactured by society to have that victim mentality.
Yeah.
Instead of the righteousness, really, I suppose.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. The desire to live or the desire to die is a choice. It's a choice. In the first instance.
Well, there's a time to live and a time to die. Somebody once said.
He did,
when it's time to meet thy maker.
Turn.
Oh, is that Travis?
No, I was doing that. Mine was Iron Maiden.
Mine was the Bird.
Yeah. It's a great song, that,
Time to die when it's time to meet thy maker. Do you know what? At the end of the day, the way I read it, it's got to be simple. It has to come down to being simple for me. All these man-made religions, all this, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. None of that's true when you actually read the Bible. The Bible tells you a totally different thing. That was very interesting to me, because all the other religions have got all these things that you've got to do. Some have got special handshakes and a bit of a whisper and a kundalini thing going up your spine, all this stuff. The Bible doesn't say any of that. It's very, very simple, very, very straightforward, but it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is to understand it and to follow a better way of living, because I've lived this life. I've not got here without making one or two mistakes and understanding what this life is, but to be given the chance to understand what it was all meant to be about from the beginning, and it's all there for us to read. It's the same as the law. The law's written down. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of knowing this is no excuse. If you come home and you watch EastEnders, Emmerdale, whatever, which is what I used to do, then you're missing out on everything, and you're just going to be carried down with the water. There's only two places to be, and if you're not with Jesus, then you're gone. That's how that's how it reads. It doesn't matter what I believe; it's what it says and what it reads. If that's true, there's a lot of people in a lot of trouble. If it's not true, we all have a laugh about it in heaven because we'll all be there. So something's got to give here, and we've got to get to that point where what is this world all about? What have we been taught? Why is it always against? Me and Alex were talking about the Paris thing. Why is it always Jesus that's mocked? If Muhammad had been mocked at those Olympics, Paris would be on fire now.
Yeah, I think we'd be seeing a different story, wouldn't we?
So there's a difference, and there's something going. Is there something in this? Should I look at this? Should I read this Bible that I've never read? So I was sat with somebody a good friend of mine who'd lost a daughter, who took her own life, and she said to me, "Do you not think I've looked through all this to see where I can find some help and some solace and some comfort?" And I said, "You just told me you've never read the Bible." She went, "Well, you're right, I've not." I went, "So how could you say you've done everything? If I'd done everything but never read the bills of exchange, I wouldn't understand what I was talking about." You've got to be humble and go back to what you've been taught. And I had to be humble when I was on the caravan floor, waking up, not wanting to be here anymore, mate. I was done. It was, I'd given up. I've never been, thankfully, I've never been to the place where I've ever wanted to take my own life or even thought of it. But waking up and going, "Oh, not again." Yeah, that happens. To see people who've done, I know people personally who've took their own lives because of council tax, because of gas bills, and to see that there's a remedy there and to see nobody bothering with it, it's been
again,
hard.
I think this is down to the lack of communication between humanity again. People feel very vulnerable, like as if there's nobody there to help them, but we're out here, people just have to ask. But I think again, people are in fear of asking because they don't want to look the fool or vulnerable.
When they look, it'll unravel everything they've ever been taught, Andrew. I've lived it. Right. It unraveled my entire life because my mum would not lie to me, but she did. She didn't know that. She believed the lies as well. If those lies are true, because I've taught my daughter to work hard and pay bills as well, there's something wrong with society. What's society being run by? We can see that it's influenced by very dark, satanic nature. What's the opposite of satanic? There's got to be the two. So you've got to be humble. You've got to have a bit of humility.
So what
anyway, I do think. Go on, Alex. Sorry.
I was just going to ask you, Andrew. Obviously, you've got your spiritual take on life that you developed over, your decades on the earth.
Right. I was 49 yesterday.
Right. Yeah. So great being in your 40s. I can remember it dimly.
Get wrinkles.
Yeah.
I'm just out of them.
But how do you see from your framework, like people who inhabit very nice, tightly packaged ideological and dogmatic systems, and that includes, Christianity as a very clear understanding of the start point and then the end point. If you've not got that, how do you, from your perspective, see endgame in terms of the human condition, where we're at, on the brink, on the precipice? Some people say it'll be nuclear, others say it'll be a total implosion. Will there be some external cosmic redemption? Some people believe that space aliens are going to come and, save us at the last minute. What's your view on the whole endgame for humans?
I think we're going to pull through, aren't we? I think we're going to lose people on the way, which we have. COVID, that whole shit show, for want of a better word, that was people putting their faith in government too far. So the controlling hand, feeling the controlling hand was there to help. And I think a lot of people had their eyes open to the fact that maybe they're not there to help us. Maybe they've been stifling us in some ways to keep us in that sort of controlled mechanism. And I do believe people are going to come good. People are going to come good. There's more good out in the world than there is bad, for sure. When I traveled when I was younger in my 20s, I kept coming back to my friends and we'd meet at Christmas or whatever. And I'd always say, there's so much more good out there. People are so good. I had the luxury of traveling the whole of the UK in my 20s because of my employment. And I met so many good people, so many people. They'd help you without thinking about it, Yeah. And I think we've been through a dark period as humanity generally, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. There is always light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, well, we've got to play our parts somewhere along the line. Sure. We've got to, and this is what this is about, having a conversation, and it's great actually that you've jumped on, Andrew. I want to keep calling you just Space Goat Farts, but it's a bit of a mouthful.
Do you know what that's from? Do you know where I got that name?
No.
There's a guy in the US, and he used to do future prediction utilizing computer models. His name's Cliff High. He's Canadian. Right. He's fantastic, and he used to do these things called the Alter Report, and it was very expensive, a lot of money, like a couple of $1,000 each month for a report, which he'd sort of predict the future, for want of a better word. And in his modeling, there were the different titles, and the one that was way off, the one that was just like these crazy ideas, were called Space Goat Farts. So I picked on that, and I just thought that's a great moniker to use on the internet because it's a crazy world of technology. So I sort of ran with that, and that's where that name came from.
Excellent. That's it, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, we've all got our own story to tell, human interest story. This is the thing, if we don't have a global conversation, exactly. We've got to have there's got to be a global conversation which puts us in touch again with our shared core humanity, because that is the thing.
I think that's the secret, everything.
Yeah.
That's what governments try to stop. They try to stop us communicating. Again, I worked internationally. Okay. I worked in Kuwait for a while. I met so many good people, so many Turks, Indians, Greeks, just good people from around the world. And when I come back and see how they're portrayed on the television, these evil people that they're just out to kill us all. And that's so untrue. It's just so untrue.
Well, the Greeks and the Turkish people that you met are the same people that have been lied to that you meet in England, Wales, Scotland.
Yeah, you're right.
Fundamentally, the real people, the everyday people,
at the end of the bed.
We've all been lied to on the same things. Everybody over a certain level who are useful, they're all involved in secret societies, they're all involved in handshakes, they're all involved in trusts, they're all involved in legislation and stuff like that. when people decipher all that and stop just thinking that, oh, well, everything's conspiracy theory. Everything is a conspiracy. Everything is a conspiracy. If you can't see that, then you are not paying attention. I wasn't even really paying attention. I knew that we were under all this. I've known it since I was a kid, but life takes over. You know, you've got a life to lead. You have mistakes to make, and I've made a few. And I've come out this other side, and I've looked back and gone, "Hey, hang on a minute! I've sussed some of this out." And it was when I'd sussed some stuff out that I thought, I've got to tell people, because my mum always taught me that if I thought I was right about it, something, I should stand up and defend myself. So I did. And I lost more family and friends telling the gas were free than becoming a born-again Christian. Or I could have become a Satanist and I wouldn't have lost as many friends. They just, oh, that's interesting. What does that entail? Is it just the odd goat every other week or the chicken every week that you sacrifice? It wouldn't have mattered. But when I told them that they shouldn't pay the bills, wow, that was the clincher for me, because I couldn't believe it was true. So I gave it to my mate, who's my best mate. I said, I know you'll tell me I'm a dickhead. I know you'll read it and you'll tell me whether I'm wrong. And he came back and said, I think you're right. And that man walked through the court system with me and did his own. And we all got to the same place. We knew what we were doing was correct. We just couldn't get it proven.
When you're right, you're right.
Unless we sued them. And we physically couldn't do it. With what they took out of us, with the fighting that we were doing, we were in court nearly every week. Every other week at least we had a court hearing. Some would be adjourned just to mess us about, all that kind of stuff.
They say you should pick the fight, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I think what you've done, Paul, is you picked Goliath.
Yeah.
Do you know what? No, that Goliath picked me. I said, no, Goliath, I'm not interested. He came after me, flicked my ears, pulled my beard, spat in my face and said, we're going to do this. And I went, bang, there you go then, Goliath. Oh, I didn't know you were bring in that. I didn't bring a catapult. I brought a check. I paid you. It's done. Never seen the panic like it. I just knew it was correct. I know it's right. I just wish people would get onto it and do it the right way, not go off half-cocked, because it creates a backlog of issues that people have got to get around to get to their own court case. So many court cases that are being taken on purpose to lose, in my opinion, because it creates stumbling blocks.
It gives that justification.
Yeah, but it's the stumbling blocks for the next person to come along. So, well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, it's nice you come on, but you can come on again and tell us not a little bit more about your trips around the country.
Yeah.
But when you learned where this stuff was wrong, when you learned that life wasn't quite like that, because I mean, we've done 2 hours now. We could go on for this for forever because of what is going on. But me and Alex, because Jimmy as well, Jimmy's had a lot of input to me to get me to start doing these podcasts again. Because
I was so happy to see you rebroadcast.
Yeah,
like it really made my day the other day just to see that you put something up again, because I did possibly think that you were done with all this. So I for one was really happy to see you rebroadcasting and
I was
getting back on that horse, isn't it? You know,
I was done with it, mate. And Alex will tell you there's several podcasts that have been set up and never happened because I just couldn't do it. I was diagnosed with PTSD because of other things that have gone on since. So over the last 3-4 years, I've had a lot of mental health issues that I've had to deal with myself, because mental health is just, it's gone. There is no mental health service.
It's another thing that, again, is brushed under the carpet.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
You've done so much for so many without them realizing what you've done. And I think some people need to have a little bit of mental time just to maybe mull some of that over, take it on board and put it actually into action. Because you especially with the raconteurs, there was so much good information came out of that. So much education for people. And it was really good because it was in a down-to-earth, friendly manner. You know, it was easy for people to absorb.
Because we're all just knobheads that have learned through our mistakes through life. There's no
That's right.
pretentiousness of it. There's nothing pretentious about Jason, about Aid, about me, about Andy, who was one of the original raconteurs. You know, I mean, Andy just had this voice for radio. I've been stuck with Andy where people have I know you, but are you on the radio? They don't know his face, but they recognise his voice and his drawl straight away. And it was about all the information. I mean, Andy had people like Barry Trower on. Barry Trower was telling people anybody who puts Wi-Fi,
amazing gentleman.
puts Wi-Fi into primary schools should be hung because you're stripping the DNA. I know these frequencies. I'm special boat services. You know, all this stuff come out of a little radio station that Andy and Jason set up, and you were talking to people with real intellect, real knowledge, but you don't know them because they're not on the BBC, you know, on this. It was really strange because they always had the bills of exchange bingo bash. Anybody mentioning anything to do with bills of exchange, my card's in, all this kind of stuff. But it was because that bills of exchange, it covers everything. I can't get a Mars bar in a shop without participating in bills of exchange. So I knew that must be really pertinent for us to understand and for us to have the understanding we have where we always lose at the game of Monopoly. And when people want to know this, and they didn't. Now people want to know it, but it's like starting 10 years back. They're starting on the wrong things that they've already ignored. That check, you can't ignore that check. That was
what you said earlier as well. I think if the financial system does go tits up, that's that gone. Once we step into this digital currency, I think it's a game changer. I think this is why everything's accelerating, because the people at the top, they know these nails in the coffin are in. And if they can get the central bank digital currencies in, that's that, because the bills of exchange will be out the window and we'll be on a different playing field. We'll be on a global playing field when countries won't really matter so much because they'll just switch you off and you'll be out of the game.
Yeah.
That's where we're balanced at the minute, I think, with what's going on now. Just to answer you, Jimmy, on Irish Jimmy, I've no contact with Irish Jimmy. He was doing raconteurs, sadly after Jason passed, but he's not done any broadcasts, and I've no contact info for Jimmy. But Andrew, if you want to come back on and then tell us a bit more about your background and your story, because when Alex was talking to me about doing this podcast, we were talking about testimony. Now, not necessarily everybody's going to find the path that me and Alex found with Jesus, but it doesn't mean we can't talk about what other paths there are. For me, I know that I've done all the other stuff and I couldn't find the answers, and I'm finding answers where I'm at right now. But you have obviously
I took a convoluted route round, mate.
Me too, mate. So that's what I'm saying. We need to get people on. It's even if it's not just the spiritual stuff. How you found out about the lies in this world, why you didn't accept it, whether it was just something that was always in the back of your head.
It's always been in me. It's always. Do you know the first thing that set me off? I'll tell you, right? You'll laugh at this. This is going to be crazy. But the first thing that set me off, Father Christmas.
Yeah, what a fraud.
Yeah, you know, but it's a lie that everyone loves to continue with. And
Well, that's
that
why
was
when
that.
I
That
knew,
was the start. That was the start for me. I lay at the bottom of my parent, and we got a porch in my parental house, and went to bed one Christmas Eve. I think I was 7 years old, and I was laying in bed, and I was thinking, he's going to be coming. He's going to be coming, and I have to see him. I have to know what this is about. And I went and slept in the porch under a mat. And I could hear my parents. And I was like, what are they doing? They should be going to bed. Father Christmas is coming. And I could hear them rapping, and I could hear the paper and the sellotape. And that was that if they lie about this, what else did they lie about? Why would my parents lie? I love them from the bottom of my heart. You know, why would they do this to me? I felt betrayed in a sense. Betrayed by my own parents, and it set me off then on a path of truth, I suppose. I wanted to know everything. Why this? Why that? Why is the world the way it is?
I just said to my mum, I found my presents. That Father Christmas has already brought me, apparently. You've hidden them up there. So, you know, there's nothing bloody sacred with you, is there? You know, I'm like 8 or 9 at this point, so I knew there was no Father Christmas. Me and my dad was sitting watching documentaries. Like I said, we watched the JFK documentary, which was an investigation into the Warren Commission's findings. And just from audio that they'd had, you know, they're talking about possible 13 shots fired. Well, hang on a minute. There's 3, weren't there? Yeah, there's one that's hit the curb. Oh, we don't count that one. There's one that's hit the dashboard. We don't count that one. But these other 3 we can count for. And it's like, this is common sense. There's no theory about this. That's common sense. You can't have one bullet stopping, turning right, stopping, turning left to continue all this other damage. It just can't be done. And that was just common sense to me. And even now, Andrew, my mum's voice, use your common sense, Paul. Use your common sense. Use what you were born with. Use your common sense. Well, all of a sudden, when I was using common sense, people who I thought had common sense was like way off. I'm going, what are we talking about here? It was like everything was building up to where I'm at. Once I found out paying bills was the wrong thing to do, all of a sudden everything unraveled, because then I went, that means everything's wrong. Everything I've been taught's wrong. That means all the politics,
This is the
all
thing,
the
isn't
banking.
it?
Everybody knows that banking's wrong, politics is wrong. There's all lies. Everybody knows that.
Again, we're back to that Bible, aren't we? We're back to those stories.
Yeah.
The usury, the whole usury thing.
Yeah.
Again, isn't it? What was Jesus' issue in the temple? Why did he smash the table of the moneylenders? And it was the usury.
That's why we've got to come back to this. Yes, that's why we've got to take the whole thing.
On that Father Christmas story, I found that really intriguing, Andrew, because strikes me that that's a charming story that also it's a bit of a tearjerker, and it made me feel really that you're obviously a highly sensitive soul, and I was thinking about both the curse and the blessing of that you've probably experienced in your life, that it's been a real asset to you and also an Achilles heel.
You're right. You're spot on there, Alex. Yeah. I think that's what has caused a lot of issues throughout my life. I've had an intrinsic knowledge of people when they're trying to deceive me.
Yeah.
And call it intuition, call it whatever you want. And sometimes that's made me act like, you know, I've been very offish with people, but it's that inner knowing, isn't it? This is what this is about. It's that knowing.
Yeah.
And you can't unknow.
No. Very, very true. Very true. Yeah. But it's interesting because obviously the die cast really with the poignant memory of a Father Christmas story because that's the stuff that everyone tries to charm us with. It's a charming story. And yet for you, it was a profoundly deceptive story.
Yes.
One that led to a kind of betrayal trauma almost from your beloved parents. And it's like, wow, that is, and to be honest, what's interesting about that is that's the starting point of your spiritual journey, but again, based on truth and integrity.
Yeah. It goes deep, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And apparently, Jimmy's life was ruined by Father Christmas, and he wants to know if that's a Daily Sport headline. It would make a very good headline, I think, Jimmy. What did he do to you? Whatever did Father Christmas do to you, Jimmy? Come on, we need you to fess up, mate. So you need to come on yourself and tell us what Father Christmas did to you. I hope it weren't dodgy, mate.
Look at that, Alex. Ada decides to join us, right, as we're finishing.
Hey! Oi, hi, guys. It's Ada. Hey, Ada.
Anyway, we're coming up for 2.5 hours here, lads.
Well, yeah, but I'll tell you what, thank you very much for jumping in, Andrew, because
you're welcome.
It added an extra dimension, and I think we need to promote more of it, because if you have two geezers, the thing about it is you can end up repeating yourself. And the point is, human interest stories are what is the glue that hold all of us together. Your life experience is priceless, and we can all talk about that and support and affirm one another. So, you know, at the end of the day, brilliant. So it didn't feel like that it's about 45 minutes, and it's just flown by that last 45. But yeah, brilliant. We've come on again, Andrew.
That's why.
I'd be more than welcome to do so. Really happy to do so, though.
That's why Father Christmas ruined Jimmy. Didn't tell him his gas were free, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Andrew. Like I said, we're planning on doing this on a weekly basis. So,
cool.
get your testimony.
I'll drop you an email.
Yeah. But get your testimony for how you found out about this world and where you're up to, how it happened, and we're looking to get different people on. Ada's one of them who's going to come on and tell her testimony. Like I said, not everybody's finding Jesus. I hope they do, because it's the only truth I've found, but it's the testimony of this world. If we can at least establish the truth of this world, we can debate the rest. True enough. It's that simple. So thanks, Andrew. I'll be in touch with you soon. Stay in touch, pal. All right, mate.
Great to meet you. Great to meet you, Andrew.
And you, Alex.
Yeah, fantastic, mate.
Nice one. Well, mate, thanks for coming on and having the chat with us. Like I said, there's that much going on. It's hard to keep up with it. I think the flames are being fanned.
There'll be more by next Sunday, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll probably see more from next Sunday, mate. So take it from there then. Thanks again.
All right, there's the email of Andy in the chat. Fantastic. I'll just cut and paste that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Lovely.
I'm with you. Bloody hell, you're getting used to this now, aren't you?
Getting there. Slowly but surely. Yeah.
Right, pal. Thanks for tonight, mate. I'll be in touch.
All the best. And
let me know what
schedule is this week. We'll probably have some contact before next one.
Yeah, let me know what your schedule is this week, lad.
Yeah, I'll let you know as soon as I'm clear.
All right, brother.
Fantastic.
Take care. Hang about. I'll set her out in a minute. Thanks for listening. If you put up with us for this long, you're doing all right. There's stuff that you need to find out, boys and girls. and I do mean boys and girls, the stuff you need to find out. You need to get some truth and find out where you're up to in this world, because the world's running away with you. I don't know how else to put it, but this is where we're at. Take care, God bless. And
Your gas is free. Your gas is free in a get-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free in a get-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free in a get-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free in a get-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.